This piece of Lisa is being brought to you by Mutual Security Credit Union. Find out more at mscu.com. Wait until you hear about the new sex ed curriculum in New York City, public schools. And I want to tell you that the old one wasn't so great either. The New York Post is reporting that they obtained workbooks that will be used for the new recommended curriculum, which begins in middle schools. So you're talking about age 13 and up. And high schools around the city next spring. Some middle schools begin at 12, but most at 13. Middle school students will be assigned risk cards that rate the safety of different activities from French kissing to oral sex in middle school. In middle school. Inappropriate, I'm telling you right now. Right now, I'm telling you. No way, Jose, do I think that that's appropriate material to be exposed to children without their parents. Period, end. And I am in favor of sex education. I'm in favor of very basic sex education. I'm in favor of sex education that teaches girls about getting their period, because a lot of mothers don't. And it's unfortunate, and it's scary. It's scary if you don't know what's happening to you, and, you see blood on your underpants or something like that, and it's a scary thing. So maybe we have a right to assume that not every mother and father will teach their children, teach their daughters about the natural things that happen in life. And unfortunately, we know that 15% of kids are hitting age puberty by the age of 7. So more than ever, I think basic sex education and body function and health is important in school. I do. But I think it should be very basic. And I think when you get beyond the basics, you get in trouble. And it's not necessary, and it's not appropriate, and it's not values-laden. Our job as parents is to teach our children, in my opinion, that sex is not divorced from love and commitment. That's my view. That's what I've taught my children. What they want to do with that information will be their life. But I don't want them sitting in a classroom learning anatomical facts in an empty context. I'm not happy with that. I was not happy when I found out that the sex ed curriculum in Westport Public Schools had my young high school daughter, maybe she was in middle school at the time, actually, putting a condom on a banana. Excuse me. Julie's crying. Excuse me. I was not happy with that, okay? I thought... Now, what you're going to say to me is, Lisa, wake up. There are kids doing it. Everyone has to know everything. You know what? Not so much and not true. And also, don't you think parents should have a right to see that curriculum in advance a little bit? I mean, I basically signed off and said that sex ed was okay for my kids, but I didn't know the depths of which they were going to do it. So let me tell you this. There's other things that Columbia University is proud to run a website. The workbooks for older students, and older, by older we mean like ages 14 to 18, explore topics such as sexual positions, porn stars, and bestiality. Okay? It's just... The lessons explain risky sexual behavior and suggest that students go to stores to compare condom brands and prices? What? The Department of Education of New York says that the curriculum stresses that abstinence is the best way to avoid pregnancy and STT/HIV, reminds the New York Post that parents have the option to exclude their kids from lessons on methods of prevention. But when given details of the new programs, one Manhattan mom who has a child in middle school was surprised because she said, quote unquote, I didn't know how much detail they would get. In August, the Deputy Mayor Linda Gibbs recommended the return of mandatory sex ed. She says, we want to help kids delay the onset of sexual activity, but if they do choose to engage in sex, to do it in a healthy way. And the classes are co-ed. By the way, we did not have co-ed health, I have to tell you, in those days. It would have been very embarrassing. I know the kids handle it now. I commend them for doing so. But I think it's embarrassing anyway. Don't you think sex ed for co-eds at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old is very embarrassing? Isn't it? Or am I crazy? Am I really from a different century? Clearly. Clearly I am. And I'm from a different century, so what do you think about this? You're a parent. I want to hear from some parents of some middle schoolers or younger kids. I'd like to hear your opinion right here in Fairfield County, Westchester County, Long Island, New York City. Are you comfortable with a very detailed sex ed curriculum that goes into positions, that goes into S&M behavior, that goes into perverted behavior, which is a value-laden word that I use? Are you comfortable with your child learning all the different possibilities of 3 ways and 2 ways and this ways and that ways? Are you? I believe that this is the reason why many children actually send their kids to private schools. I think if you really get down to the nitty-gritty, it's about very often sending your child to a school whose values are consistent with your values. It isn't always about whether or not they're going to get an A, or B, or C, or end up in Harvard or Yale. Sometimes it's about the level of learning that your child can attain. But very often it isn't. Very often parents who are not Catholic choose to send their kids to Catholic schools because they like the training. They like the emphasis on obedience. They like the emphasis on authority. They like the emphasis on uniforms, which takes the kids out of having to compete with each other for clothing. They like the emphasis on acts and morality in general. There are many Catholic families, non-Catholic families I know, who, given their public school choices, prefer Catholic school and are not apologetic about it at all. Why should they be? When it came to my own children, they were in and out of public school for different reasons. My son ended up at a high school that was very value-driven. It was Episcopal school, actually. Once a week he had to go to church, which was, fine with me because the message was not about Jesus Christ. If it had been exclusively about that or even a little bit about that, I would have been upset as a Jew. But the message were about morals with which all of us can agree. And they were important lessons to learn in life. And he went to a school that had bad slips. If you were mean to another kid, you got a bad slip. Not an in-between slip, not a pat on the wrist slip, but a bad slip. And you get too many bad slips and you had to work at the school extra chores. And I thought that was a good idea because it let the kids know what was good and what was bad. What was good and what was bad. Nothing wrong with that. My daughter spent her formative years, 3 of them in a Montessori program, and then, which is very different kind of way of teaching, very hands-on teaching. And 4 years in a Jewish day school in Stanford, which was known for a values-laden approach. And if she was exposed to sex ed, which I don't know that she was, she went there through 5th grade. She might have been a little bit. I guarantee it was not this stuff. I guarantee it was very age-appropriate, very gentle, very traditional, very introductory, very much probably about respecting your bodies, talking to your parents about bodily changes, stuff like that, which I would have been very comfortable with. Very. I want to talk more about education. Front page of the Sunday Times, maybe it was Saturday, had a fascinating article about the titans of Silicon Valley out in California and how they are choosing to educate their children. And here's what it says. The chief technology officer of eBay sends his children to a 9-classroom school. So do employees of Silicon Valley giants like Google, Apple, Yahoo, and Hewlett-Packard. And the school is called the Waldorf School. Actually, it's not just one school. The Waldorf School is a training. It's like Montessori. It's a way about thinking about teaching. And there are many different Waldorf schools around. I think there's even one in Richfield, but I could be wrong. Listen to this. There's no computers to be found in the school. They use pens and paper, knitting needles, and occasionally mud. No screens. Screens are not allowed in the classroom. The school frowns on their use even at home. Even though schools nationwide are rushing to supply their classrooms with computers, there are people that are at the epicenter of technology in this country who think wrong, wrong, Wrong. You've got your whole life to learn how to use an iPad and a calculator. It'll take you 2 seconds. But if you don't learn how to read and write, you'll be illiterate your whole life. Your whole life. And that's what I'm talking about. And I've been talking about it on this radio show since the day I got on. About calculators in the classroom in second grade. And we don't have kids knowing math. Gee, there's a shocker. There are about 160 Waldorf schools in the country. They subscribe to a teaching philosophy focused on physical activity and learning through creative hands-on tasks. In many ways, it is similar to Montessori. They believe that computers inhibit creative thinking, movement, human interaction, and attention spans. And by the way, they're right, because the research is coming out that the more time you spend in front of a screen, the less of an attention span you have. I'm going to guess it's one of my problems lately. I've been accused of being ADD in the last few years. I never was that way. Maybe it's because I sit in front of a screen all day. There is, of course, an intensifying debate about the role of computers in education, but listen to this. One gentleman says, I fundamentally reject the notion that you need technology aids in grammar school. The idea that an app on an iPad can teach my kids to read or do arithmetic, that's ridiculous. This particular person, Mr. Alan Eagle, holds a computer science degree from Dartmouth, and he works in executive communications at Google, where he's written speeches for Eric Schmidt, the chairman. He says his 5th grade daughter doesn't know how to use Google. His son is just learning. Starting in 8th grade, the school allows the limited use of gadgets. 3/4 of the students here have parents with a very strong high-tech connection. And as one of them said, if I worked at Miramax and made good artsy R-rated movies, I wouldn't want my kids to see them till they were 17. In other words, they want their kids to learn the fundamentals. Then they can learn the shortcuts. I totally agree with that. And I think it's very interesting, a contrarian approach in Silicon Valley, something that you may want to be thinking about for your children. You've just been listening to A Piece of Lisa. If you'd like to listen to the whole 2-hour show, please go to lisawexler.com, where all shows are archived. And do follow me on Twitter, @Lisa Wexler. Thanks for listening.